Hi, and welcome back. I hope you've been practicing your deep listening skills with friends, family, and coworkers. Have you seen a difference in how people respond to you when you deeply listen to them? There are two more bonuses to being a deep listener. One, you'll learn more. And two, people will start to follow your lead because they like being heard. So keep at it, and you'll start to see your investment pay real dividends. Now let's move into our second dialogue skill. This one, people have a lot of trouble doing well. Constructive feedback. Please get out your paper and pen again. I'd like you to write down your first thoughts and reactions to the word feedback. Let loose. Write whatever you're thinking right now. Here are some responses I've heard when I teach this topic. Oh no, here it comes. What did I do now? Okay, it's information I need. Let me have it straight. Get ready. Defensive. Bad news. Painful. Useful. And so on. The reactions are always mixed, but the vast majority of the responses are stress-inducing and negative. Why do you think people respond this way to a simple word like feedback? Well, it's because it's been misused, abused, and feedback has been delivered poorly in most people's experience. We're going to change all that today. I hope that made you smile. Are you smiling? Now I'd like you to think about someone with whom you want or need to share some challenging or perhaps difficult information regarding their behavior or actions. Okay, do you have that person in mind? Good. So why haven't you done it? Here's some frequent responses I've heard to that question. I don't know how. I don't want to rock the boat. I'm afraid of what will happen. I've tried it before and nothing changed. I don't want to hurt anyone. I'm afraid of what they'll say or do. Maybe it's my fault. It's probably not that important. Hey, it's not my job to tell them. Do any of these reasons sound familiar to you? I expect at least one of them does. What if you could have a tool in your interpersonal mastery toolbox to help you do this well? Wouldn't that relieve some of your concern? Well, you can. Let me give you the real definition of constructive feedback, and then we'll take a look at the technique so you can use it to help you make a paradigm shift in your mind. I believe you will feel more confident and less anxious about giving and receiving constructive feedback. Here's the correct definition. Constructive feedback is information about the impact of a behavior or action. The information itself is not negative or positive. Information is neutral. And sharing important information can be of great benefit to everyone. For the purpose of this session, we'll focus mainly on the kind of information that is harder to deliver, because that's where most people have the toughest challenge. Giving constructive feedback on positive behavior is easy. And while many people don't do it often enough, it's really the tough stuff I want to help you with today. So consider this. Would you want to have spinach on your teeth right before a presentation you're making and have no one tell you about it? Or how about this? Would you want people talking about behaviors of yours that irritate them, but never speak directly to you when it's something you could and probably would adjust if you only knew? Constructive feedback is our super duper pooper scooper because it's the stinky group secrets that create havoc. And constructive feedback, when done well, can both prevent and clean up stinky interpersonal challenges. When everyone or even only you know something but won't openly discuss it, we can unintentionally create unproductive workplaces and unhappy home environments. Unresolved smaller issues can evolve into full-blown conflicts that become toxic to those directly or indirectly involved, and toxic spills spread. The more we dance around or ignore the truth, the more smelly that something becomes. I'm not saying constructive feedback is a silver bullet for every situation we come across, but in my personal and professional experience, it works well at least 85% of the time. That's a pretty high success rate, certainly compared to what you're probably getting now. There is a catch, though. It works when and only when it is executed well by the giver. Another myth about constructive feedback is that it will hurt the receiver. Consider this. Would you rather hear about your dental spinach issue privately from a friend or a colleague, or would you rather go on stage and find out about it later? In fact, constructive feedback is the kindest, most respectful thing you can do to help another person get out of their own way. As a leader, you need to both ask for and give constructive feedback. You need to receive information about your impact to lead and develop your people well, and you need to let them know about their impact. Constructive feedback is a tool that provides an opportunity for learning and building effective relationships, up, down, and sideways, within your team, with your boss, with customers, and in all other areas of your life. However, just like any tool, it can be used to build or destroy. It's the responsibility of the giver to utilize the constructive feedback tool properly. There are a few schools of thought about how to give feedback. I want to debunk 3 of them now. First, I call it the mud sandwich. That's when we say how wonderful someone is, then how and why they stink, and then how wonderful they are again. People are waiting for the shoe to drop, and their defense walls will pop up immediately. Because we can only get away with this once before they're on to us. Second, I call it the dance. That's when we never really say what we need to say. Instead, we dance all around the topic and totally confuse the person. The irony is, we may think we gave them feedback, but most likely we didn't if they couldn't decipher it. And third, I call this the drive-by method. That's when we hit them between the eyes wherever and whenever we decide works for us. We tell them they stink and may even tell them why, and then we walk away. Some people believe this is the best way because it's quick and it's clean and it's done, and there's no fluff, just the facts. Problem is, it isn't clean. The interpersonal mess this creates is predictable and problematic, and that means it's not quick either. All of these methods give constructive feedback a bad name. So let's learn to use this tool so you have a much higher likelihood of success. There are 6 steps for constructive feedback. Let's look at them one at a time. And by the way, the first 5 steps are the same when providing constructive feedback for both positive and negative behaviors and actions. Okay, number 1, prepare. Consider the time and place. Consider emotional issues, yours and theirs. Consider the person and their personal style. Mentally prepare, even make notes. Okay, 2, convey positive intent. This is advocacy. Remember dialogue skills? This is when you are talking about what you need to talk about. It points to a common goal. Your motivation must be for improvement or development, not blame. Briefly state what you would like to discuss and why using I statements. I want to stop here for a second and talk about number 2. Conveying positive intent is often the most forgotten thing to do. What we do is we jump right into step number 3, which is describe what you've observed, instead of starting with why I care about improving this situation or helping to develop that person. So please pay very close attention to step number 2. All right. Step number 3, describe what you've observed, advocacy. Again, this is when you're describing the situation. Be specific and to the point, not about 500 things, about one thing. Focus on the behavior or action, not the person or his qualities or her qualities. Number 4, State impact of behavior or action. Again, this is advocacy. You're still describing what you've observed. This time you're talking about the impact that they had or that the behavior had. Link behavior to the impact on you, on the business, maybe even on them and other people. You might state 1 or 2 consequences you believe will happen if no change occurs. Step 5, ask the other person to respond. Now we're into inquiry. We're asking for their thoughts. Ask open-ended questions. Listen deeply without becoming defensive yourself. Keep the focus on the topic, but be open to receive feedback if it's relevant. Oftentimes you get information you didn't even know about. And then summarize. So the last step, number 6, focus your discussion on solutions, not blame. This is dialogue. This is back and forth, inquiry and advocacy. When appropriate, ask for the change you wish to see happen or that you hope to see happen for the other person. Be willing to help support the change if, in fact, that would work. Be open to solutions. Brainstorm with them. And definitely identify next steps. How you're going to follow up. What's the timeline? Remember, giving constructive feedback when you know there's something important for you to share is your responsibility. What the person chooses to do with that information is their responsibility. You cannot control their choices or their part of the equation. This technique may feel awkward to you at first. In fact, I expect it will. Doing these steps in exactly this order is important, and putting the steps into your own words to fit the person and the situation is just as important. It's always okay to circle back to convey your positive intent again and again. And it's also important to stay focused on just the issue while staying open to hear their perception of reality. Be aware that when you are a leader, your whisper is often heard as a shout. Why is that? Because we all bring our authority issues to work with us. If you're the boss, people know you're the boss and behave differently with you and because of you. So keep this in mind as you're preparing your constructive feedback and really focus on your positive intent to help the receiver hear and take in what you're saying. We've talked about giving constructive feedback. It's also important to be a good receiver. This is a challenge for many people. To be a good receiver, you need to listen objectively without interrupting. Deep listening skills. You need to avoid taking the feedback so personally that you become defensive. In order to receive well, please avoid justifying your behaviors or actions. Respond constructively even if you feel under attack. Hear the truth within the feedback and take appropriate action. Ask for and welcome suggestions. Be humble. And end with the 2 most important words when someone gives you the gift of constructive feedback. Thank you. What? Yes, say thank you for their courage, for their honesty, for taking the time and caring enough to share their thoughts with you. Feedback interactions can and should be valuable learning experiences for both people involved. Once you become more comfortable with giving and receiving feedback, you will find it to be a highly effective dialogue skill in preventing conflicts and correcting problems before they get out of hand. This skill also helps build strong and trusting relationships. When you use constructive feedback as part of your organization's culture, it opens up lines of communication, reduces fear, and moves everyone forward. Right now, I need to leave for a bit to meet with Charles for a coaching session. I'll see you again soon. Happy practicing. So Charles, you said you had a feedback challenge that you wanted to talk about. So let's use today as a way to begin the preparation for that.
Sure.
Tell me about it.
Well, I have this employee, David, who is amazing. Technically, just really proficient, just a sparkling project manager. But he doesn't realize the impact of his lack of interpersonal skills and some of his demeaning remarks, and actually some turnover. People are, beginning to leave the team.
Okay, so what is the core issue you want him to hear?
He's got a really good sense of kind of what's going to work with the project, but he doesn't understand that if things don't quite go the way he wants them to, it's not okay to start handing out sarcastic remarks, being impatient. And one of the other things that's been happening is that he's started to shout
Oh,
a
dear.
little bit. Yeah, and that shouting makes it seem like that he's the only one who knows how to do anything right, and it leaves everybody on the team demoralized.
Why haven't you given him any feedback before?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just worried about how he's going to take it. I'm worried that he might take it the wrong way, get defensive, shut down, or even worse, maybe he'll even quit. And that would just be more detrimental. But I've let it go for far too long, and I gotta let him know what the impact is of his behavior. I just gotta wrangle that.
Yes, you do. There's no question about it. This is going to be a great opportunity for you to practice the constructive feedback skills we've learned already. Being able to give him constructive feedback is going to be a very important thing for you to do as his leader. He needs to know, he needs to be aware, or he'll fail. And you don't want him to fail, and you don't want him to quit. You're going to need to do a little bit more preparing to think about how he needs to hear this message, because you want him to hear it and you want him to act on it. The next thing you're going to want to do is make sure you convey positive intent, and you've certainly conveyed that to me. In fact, all of what you've said to me today, I think he needs to hear the way you believe he'll hear it best. The next thing you need to do is really state your observations of what you've seen and what you've heard, and then state the impact of those behaviors. And once you've had a chance to do that, ask him for a response, just to make sure he's hearing you and to make sure that he's hearing you the way he can hear you and that he understands and is really thinking about it. And then finally, it's important to focus on solutions, definitely not blame, and look at next steps. So what can you and he do together to make sure that something changes here for his sake, for the team's sake, and certainly as a reflection on you as a leader? It'll make a world of difference. And I think once you've done this the first time, you'll have more confidence and be able to do it again and again whenever you need to help people be successful.
Thanks, Roxy.
Yeah.
David, thanks for meeting with me.
Sure, I'm happy to. What's up?
I wanted to talk with you about our success and how we're getting there.
Yeah, we've had a good run on projects, haven't we?
Yes, we have. And I want you to know that I'm really invested in your individual growth, and I have real confidence in your skills and experience.
Thank you.
I also want to talk a little bit about something I think is getting in the way of our overall results.
All right.
Now, I think you'd agree that our overall success depends on the cohesiveness of the entire project team.
Yes, I would.
I've noticed you've been quite short and impatient with some people on the project team. I've heard some sarcastic remarks toward them, and I've even heard a little shouting.
Well, look, Charles, I'm not going to put up with team members who aren't doing their part. I found that calling them on it works well for me. I got a job to do, and I don't have time to play games with these people.
Well, I know you've got a job to get done, and your success and the team's success are both very important to me. I also think it's important for you to understand just what effect your impatience and shortness and shouting has on the team. Are you aware that people are asking to be reassigned when they're placed on a team that you're leading?
No.
And I've had 2 people quit the project in the last 3 months.
Well, that's because they had other commitments. They couldn't pull their weight.
No, David, that's because they just couldn't work with you. And that affects the success of the project, and neither you nor I can let that happen. So, David, what do you think we can do to make this better?
When people don't want to work hard enough, you're right. I have 0 patience for that. And I'm going to tell them what I think. If they were good enough, they wouldn't get strong language from me. But they're clearly not.
Well, there are 2 sides to every situation, David. Now, it sounds like there's some expectation and communication issues that need to be dealt with here.
There is, but, we can't hold hands and make everybody feel good. We don't have time. We've got work to do.
I know there's a lot of pressure. I know. And communication and communicating properly is a part of that work. Now, I'll just let you know some of my expectations. Number 1, the team's success has to happen. And I want you to be leading that success. Number 2, I have 0 tolerance for shouting at anyone. And that's going to have to stop today. Can you agree to that?
Yes, Charles, I can do that.
Good. And finally, I want to figure out a way to get you and the team back in sync. So let's set up a meeting tomorrow, try to figure that out. Okay?
All right. Thanks for being straight with me. It's given me a lot to think about.
Well, David, this conversation happened because I value you and I want you to succeed.
Okay. Getting feedback from Charles was a challenge for me. But I have to say, I had no idea how I was being viewed as a team lead. I guess I was under the impression that successful outcomes were all that mattered and that people respected me for that. Charles shared some insights that helped me identify a blind spot, and he did it in a way that was direct, but allowed me not to feel blamed. He was holding me accountable in a respectful way. I'm happy to be part of his team, and I have even more trust in his leadership capabilities because of the feedback he gave.
Hi, and welcome back. I am sure you noticed how well Charles delivered constructive feedback to David. As a receiver, David was eventually able to take in the important information Charles was sharing, even though it was hard for him to hear. Consider, though, if Charles had never shared this information with him, there's a good chance David would have failed at his job because of unresolved conflicts. Charles might have had to reassign or even fire him, and David wouldn't have had a clue what happened until it was too late. This would have been a huge and costly loss for everyone. Because Charles did his job as a leader and did it well, that disaster was prevented. David got the information he needed and was able to make choices for himself. When I say that constructive feedback helps prevent conflict, I'm not exaggerating, not even a little. To reinforce what you've learned about giving and receiving constructive feedback, you need to practice regularly, every day if possible. So please get out your paper and pen again. I'm going to give you 4 ways to practice to get you started on becoming an expert with this tool. Okay, let's begin. First, think of someone you want to encourage. Now write down the behaviors or actions you want to reinforce using your constructive feedback skills. What information do you want to share with this person about what he or she is doing well? Walk through the 6 steps to practice and then get out there and do it. as soon as you can. Second, let's go back to the person you thought about earlier, but haven't given feedback to yet. Or you may choose a different person. In any case, this is the tougher one. Practice how you will convey your positive intent. Remember how important that is so that the defenses don't come up. Speak from your heart. And remember to check your motivation by asking yourself, why is this information important to share? Now walk through the rest of the steps and consider what and how you will share this information with this person. Don't get stuck thinking about what they might say or do. Just carry on and write down what you need to say in a way you think will have the highest likelihood of being heard. I recommend you do this first on your own and then practice with someone you trust using the constructive feedback observation sheet. That sheet and more information is available to you in printable files. Bring notes if you like to any conversation. You can explain that you want to make sure you don't forget anything. So you made some notes. No one I know has ever had a problem with that, and I do it all the time. Third practice. I'd like you to begin asking for feedback yourself. Let's start here. Review your current responsibilities. You can do this with your family responsibilities as well as at work. Identify your top 2 responsibilities. Ask people you trust to be candid with you about your performance in these 2 areas that really matter to you and your success. Then listen carefully without interrupting, without defensiveness, or justifying yourself. If there are areas they suggest for improvement, listen to them. Going forward, enlist several people you respect and trust to give you regular feedback about your behaviors and actions. Give them permission to let you know when you do it right and when you mess up, so you can get constructive feedback in real time. When you ask for feedback and when you respond well to feedback, including thanking them, most people are more than happy to keep helping you. So the fourth practice. This one's focused on getting feedback for your team, if you have one you lead, at work or at home. When they ask for and receive feedback from their stakeholders, teams become more aware and effective. They will be better informed and able to adjust as needed. Identify whose information and opinions the team would value most, and then ask those sources for feedback. This comes with a warning, though. Only ask when you are ready to hear and act upon the answers you receive. To become highly skilled in constructive feedback, you'll need to practice all of these over and over again with different people at different times. You can do it if you choose to. I am sure of that. I suggest you consciously make the time to practice. Soon you'll be able to catch yourself in those moments when you know something needs to be said, and you'll be confident doing something about it.